All right, welcome everyone. It's great to see everyone on this Monday afternoon here on the East Coast. It might still be morning where you're at. We're gonna spend some time today walking through our financial readiness assessment, which hopefully many of you have had a chance to see and start to look through. The purpose of this training today is really to break down all of the pieces of the financial readiness assessment, and then also kind of walk through what we're expecting to be uploaded and how to do that. So to get us started today, if you could go to the next slide, we're just going to do an icebreaker to see where people are at and maybe some fun things about your city. So if you just want to drop in the chat, or if you want to come off mute, you can, but drop a fun fact about your city. It doesn't have to be government related. It could be, well, I can give an example. So I live in Annapolis, Maryland, and my fun fact about our city is that we have the oldest uh, continuously in use state house in the United States. So our state house is the oldest one that's been in use since its beginning. So if y'all have a fun fact about your city, please feel free to come off mute or put them in the chat.
Hi, this is Kanisha with the city of Carson. I guess anytime in city of Carson in Carson in California. So anytime I try to tell somebody who doesn't know, I let them know we have an IKEA. So we have an IKEA.
I love IKEA, and there's none that are super close to me. I see another one. Fun fact about Hanford. We have the famous Superior Dairy, the best ice cream in California. There are more than 80 art galleries and 400 working artists in Laguna Beach. Oh, and Glendale has two mountain ranges within city limits. And Chula Vista used to be the lemon capital of the world. I have to make it out to California. Everybody on this call is going to be upset, but I have never been to California, so I'll have to come visit. All right. If you have any others, feel free to keep dropping them in the chat. Um, Oop, I see a couple more coming in. Goleta is arguably the northernmost coastal city in Southern California, and it's one of the hot spots for the monarch butterfly migration. I didn't know that, Cayenne, about Las Vegas. Skokie, Illinois is the world's largest village. There are 62 native languages spoken in high schools. Ooh, and they're filming The Bear there in Evanston. I threatened to shut down the production because they hurt a tree. Our CEO here at Green Latinos loves The Bear, and he's been trying to convince me to start watching it. So if they hurt more trees, though, maybe I won't watch it. Well, thank you all for participating in our icebreaker. We wanted to do something a little bit late because financial readiness is maybe not the most fun, but thanks for starting us off on a high note here. If you can go to the next slide. So we had our brief introductions last week. So just as a reminder, this particular training is being led by the Justicia y Equidad team, which is me and Caesar. And we'll be kind of walking through the training here together today. Both of our emails are up here. If you have any additional questions, we're always here to help answer them. Next slide. So this is just an overview of our agenda. We're going to spend some time just overviewing the applicant information. We'll talk a little bit about audit data and what that will look like, and then your accounting and financial management systems, procurement standards, and organizational policies. All of these we're collecting because the source of this money is federal, which means that there are some regulations that we have to make sure are in check. I think a lot of cities have managed federal funding before, so I think a lot of your policies are already in place, but we did want to spend some time just walking through it. And we'll talk through the submission instructions and also have a question and answer. Next slide. So what is the financial management questionnaire? I've talked a little bit about it, but we have a lot of federal regulations that we're looking to follow. And in short, we have to make sure that we're following the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR is what it's shortened to, for managing federal funding. And we have to ensure all of our subawardees are in compliance with 2 CFR 200, and then also a supplemental 2 CFR Part 400, which is from the USDA. And then also making sure that all of our standards meet the Office of Management and Budget circular requirements as well. And so some of those things are your accounting systems meeting the requirements of the OMB circular for uniform administrative requirements, audit requirements, and cost principles. And so if people are interested in learning more about those, if you don't know enough about them, I'm going to drop the link to both of those in the chat. And you can look at more if you would like to. So next slide. So our financial readiness questionnaire is going to be sent out in a SurveyMonkey format. So I think I mentioned this last week. We did have a lot of folks who have the Google form version. And if you have the Google form version and you're happy with submitting it that way, you're welcome to do that as well. We'll check both on the back end. But we were made aware that for folks that don't use Google as their everyday emails, there are a couple of challenges with saving them. So in the follow-up from this training, we're going to send out quite a few documents, and one of them will be a link to the exact same information. It looks exactly the same. It's just in SurveyMonkey, which you're able to save as you work through it at the same time. And so this is just a screenshot of the first couple of questions in SurveyMonkey. We're not going to go through the whole thing on screen here, but that way you can see what it looks like. And I'm going to drop the link to the SurveyMonkey in the chat as well. That way you can have it. All right. And if you could go to the next slide. And you'll also see that we've provided a PDF version. Everyone should have this already, but we'll send it out again in the follow-up to the survey as well. This is just so that you can see what is in the survey before you get started. There are quite a few pieces here, and so we understand that not everyone may have access to all the documents that need to be uploaded here. And so the reason why we're sharing this information is just so that you all have access to seeing what we're going to be collecting on this before you get started. So I'm also going to drop in the chat a link to the PDF here so you can see that as well. Next slide. So part of this is also just the reminder that we are going to have continuing eligibility and kind of some of those requirements along the way. And so this is just a reminder that we are going to have quarterly financial reimbursement check-ins. And as this goes along, we'll continue to make sure that everybody is spending the money the way that they should be in compliance with these federal rules and regulations. And so this is just a reminder that we have those due dates coming up pretty soon. Well, I guess not coming up that soon, but we'll have these coming up in October probably for the first round of reimbursements that we're going to have. And then I'm going to pass it over to Caesar to go through the next couple of slides.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate that. So I just wanted to go over on the documents that will be uploaded to support the financial readiness assessment. We've provided you guys with a Salesforce link, and we'll share it again. But pretty much this is what it's going to look like when you enter the portal. And so we're just kind of going to show you the screenshots of the steps to get there. So we want to make sure we highlight the organization, and then you're going to choose the individual that will be uploading. Then as that profile opens, you'll have a button on the right side that says upload supporting documents. So at the end of the financial assessment, there's a list of documents you'll be uploading, and this is the document. This is the button to get there. They'll take you to this screen, and as you notice, we've kind of highlighted what those documents are. So we've identified as recent financials, P&L funder. So as you upload each one of them, just make sure that they're trying to answer the question and correspond to the question that you're trying to upload the document for. For some questions, you may upload more than one, feel free. And we'll do a back-end check-in to make sure that all the questions and all the documents that are necessary to fulfill the readiness will be on hand. So if you have any questions, just feel free to email me, Caesar, and I'll be doing the check-in in the back-end for you guys. And then finally, this is the list that I was referring to. So there's an audited form, statements, balance sheets, timesheets. So all of these forms will be required to be uploaded in some form, whether it's PDF or doc. And then if you guys are having trouble or can't meet a deadline of some sort, just give us a heads up so we're fully aware of your timeline. We need these documents in order to proceed with the full agreement. So we can't emphasize this enough. And then last but not least, we want to make sure the certificate of insurance is also included in that list. Back to you, Joe.
Great. So we're going to do just a quick overview of some of the information that needs to be uploaded. And so the beginning of this document is really all of the information about your organization and the folks that we can get in contact with to make sure that some of this work is happening. So there will be a slide here that goes over your organization name, your unique entity identifier or UEI number, your cage number, and then basically you'll be required to submit a certain number of information for who is completing the form, who has signatory authority at the city when it comes to signing the agreements for the grants, who is the financial representative, so who we can go to should we have questions on the budget or the finances for each form, who is the programmatic representative, so who our colleagues Rich and Cayenne on the urban forestry team can contact for programmatic pieces, and as well as the data services representative. So we will be collecting some data as this grant moves along and who we can contact for those pieces. So this is just a screenshot again of what information we're collecting. This isn't the complete form, but this is just to overview what's there. And if you could go to the next slide. The next section on the financial or on the financial readiness questionnaire is going to be on your financial audit data. So as part of 2 CFR 200, we have to make sure that there's audits in place to make sure that the money that you all are managing is getting spent the right way. And so if you have a single audit, we'll ask that that gets uploaded. And in the single audit, we'll ask for a little bit of information in particular. So that would be the date of the last audit, the fiscal period that was audited, what the auditor's opinion was, and then if you could provide a copy of that financial audit report in the upload document. And there's a space for that in the way that Caesar had demonstrated just a few moments ago. And the reason why we're, again, collecting this information is just to make sure that the finances are being managed in the way that they should be. We also are going to ask, and you'll see this in our grant agreement template, that at the end of your fiscal year, you will have 9 months to finalize and prepare an audit for the most recent fiscal year. And we will ask that that gets sent to us as soon as possible for the duration of the grant as well. So I just wanted to highlight that now, but we'll dig more into that as we talk about the grant agreement a little bit later this week. So next slide.
Oh, sorry, Joe, just a quick question. Sorry,
Yes.
I had to step out really quickly, but just to confirm, the audit that you are requesting, is it like our last audit, excuse me, on a federal grant that we've last received, or is it just our kind of general audit for the city?
It would be the general audit for the city. If you have had multiple federal grants and you were required to have a single audit recently, that would be the preferred version, but we know that not everybody is managing federal money all the time. So as long as there's a audit for your last fiscal year, that would suffice for this requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And this is just a screenshot of the initial piece of the information that's needed there. Next slide. So we're going to ask a couple of questions on the accounting and financial management system as well. Some of this information, again, is to make sure that all of the systems and controls meet federal requirements. So as you can see here, this is going to link to CFR 200 subpart F, but basically that you're following GAAP principles in your finance and accounting. We want to find out how you're accruing that spending, whether that's cash or accrual basis. And then also making sure that you have separate tracking for funds for each grant. So if you're managing multiple grants, you want to be able to see that you can track each of those individually. And so all of that is really important to make sure that as the grant's going along, we're able to verify that the money that is getting spent for this particular grant is going to be able to be easily tracked in place. Next slide. And this is just the beginning piece of that screenshot as well. So we'll ask for the name of the accounting software. I know some folks have custom software type systems as well. So if you have your custom system, just kind of explaining that, that would be really helpful. And then just walking through how you're doing your accounting and financial management as well. Next slide. So procurement standards. So again, I'm sure most of the cities on this call have these procurement documents and procurement standards in place. And so we have our own procurement policy that will be linked in this PowerPoint slides that you can look at if you do need a reference. And we're just making sure that all of the procurement policies follow the federal requirements laid out in 2 CFR 200 subpart D. And you can see the basics on the screen here. So I wanted to uplift what the basics are here, which is that anything that is less than $10,000 does not require a price analysis for procuring those services. If it's between $10,000 and $250,000, we are going to ask that some form of cost or price analysis is made, documenting the procurement that you're looking to take. If it's exceeding that amount. And then for anything that's over $250,000, we are going to ask that there was a request for proposals or RFP that was put out that is looking for those goods and services. And in most cases, we want to see that there are best practices in place as well, looking for minority and women-owned businesses to be reached out to for these procurements. And so these are the standards that are in the federal requirements. It's very possible that your city or municipality might have a different strictness maybe on the levels and the purchases and when it needs to happen. And as long as you at least meet the requirements laid out on this slide, you'll be okay. And again, we'll provide our own policy as an example, and we can share what that looks like as well. Next slide. So the reason why procurements are so important is that we want to make sure that where possible, we're avoiding any unnecessary purchases with federal funding. We want to see the price analysis for most of the purchases that are being solicited, just to make sure that, we are paying the best possible price for the services that are in place. And there is an example in our procurement policy. You don't always have to select the lowest possible bidder, but you have to prove the reason why you're doing that. And so all of these are important to take into account as we're looking at procurements. We are ensuring that selections on contracts are made on a competitive basis with a documented price analysis. And so we also have a price analysis memo template that we've created here at Green Latinos that you can use to help guide you through the procurement if you don't have one yourself. If your city already has a template that you're using, that's totally okay. We're just providing other examples should you need it. The next thing that we're looking for is just making sure that you are creating a system to make sure that you're storing and maintaining the equipment that's purchased with federal funds. Next slide. So there's a couple of other organizational policies.
Sorry, really quickly on the procurement.
Yes.
If that's okay. Yeah, so we have it sounds like this would be fine, but we have a policy in place that we can accept bids that are up to 5% higher than the lowest bid if they come from either Evanston-based or minority or women-owned. And it sounds like that would be a justifiable reason.
Yeah, that sounds like it's definitely okay. And there are a lot of cities who I know do very similar things as well, like making sure that in the District of Columbia, you're also getting a certain number of proposals from District of Columbia businesses. So if you have considerations like that, that's definitely okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Next slide. So there's a couple of other organizational policies that must be in place when you're managing federal funding. And so a couple of these are a travel policy, so detailing how travel approval and reimbursements are happening. There is a drug and alcohol policy that must be in place, which is pretty standard, where there are prohibited substances and you cannot use them while you're working, for example. And so I did want to note here in particular that marijuana is still a federally prohibited substance, even if it's legal in your state. And so that is part of what policies need to be in place when you're managing federal funding. A whistleblower policy must be in place. And so this is really in particular to make sure that if there are any whistleblower complaints, there's a way to report and address those. And then the non-discrimination policy is pretty standard across federal laws as well. I also want to mention that should you need an example of any of these policies, Green Latinos has our own versions that we can share as well. But I am pretty confident that a lot of cities have policies like this in place already. Next slide. There's a couple other documents that I want to make sure people have, and I will send out the PDF versions of these documents after this call is over as well. And so this first document here, you can't read it necessarily super in-depth, but I'll send out a version of this right after the call. But this is a document that really is talking about justice for all and making sure that this is available to any of the folks in your agency that are working on this grant. And it needs to be distributed yearly. And so I'll send out that information as like a notice to the folks that are working on it. And then as well, there's a pamphlet here on complying with civil rights requirements. And so this should be shared with all folks that are working in the agency doing some of this work. And so these are both from the USDA. And so I will share the versions of these in the follow-up email after this call as well. But these will need to be distributed to folks working on these grants. Next slide. So just as a reminder on kind of the submission instructions and some of the work that's happening, all of the supporting documents will get uploaded into our Salesforce portal, which we walked through at the beginning of this presentation. You can see slide number 9 for the example of what that will look like. All of those documents should be completed as soon as possible after completing the SurveyMonkey. And then a requirement that there is a certificate of insurance requirement listing Green Latinos as additionally insured. This has to be in place before the subawardee agreement can be executed on our end. Next slide. So for the timeline, a couple of high-level things here, and we've gone over a couple of these timeline pieces already, but we want to make sure that we pay you, and so we have to make sure that the grant agreement is in place to be able to do that. We also are asking that this financial readiness questionnaire is completed as soon as possible, and the reason for that is that my team, myself and Caesar need to be able to review the financial readiness questionnaire before we're signing any subaward agreements. And so even if you've done the MOU work and the budget seems like it's in a good place working with Rich and Cayenne, we have to make sure that all of the pieces for managing the funding and managing your policies are also in place. And so our team is going to be doing those reviews at the same time that the urban forestry team is working on their pieces. And so we need both of these to be completed before we can have a subaward agreement signed. And so just as a reminder, we do want to try to get as many subaward agreements executed by June 30th as possible. And so that's coming up pretty quickly here. And so we're going to ask that you really prioritize getting this work done. We provided you with the PDF of what is expected to be uploaded, and we'll have these resources available should you need more help and support doing it. Next slide. We also have provided links here on the slide to all of the federal kind of regulations that relate to each one of these individual pieces here. And so I recommend that if anybody is unfamiliar or just needs a refresher on some of these policies and why we're asking for this information, you take some time and look at the appendix, and it'll link you to the right clause basically in 2 CFR 200 that describes the resources itself, or the requirements for managing federal funding. Next slide. And then finally, we're here to help. So you can reach out to Caesar or I anytime that you have questions about doing this work. I also wanted to uplift that we're going to be hosting some office hours later this week and early next week to help any organization or municipality that just needs a little bit more support working through this. And so this afternoon after this training, I'm going to send out calendar holds for these office hours. So it's going to be held on Zoom, and you're welcome to just drop in if you have any questions or thoughts. We'll have somebody here each of these windows anytime you want to drop in and ask a question. So our first office hours will be this Thursday, June 20th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. And then we're going to be hosting 2 more sets of office hours the beginning of next week on Monday, June 24th and Tuesday, June 25th from 3 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So again, one of us will be on those meetings the whole time. And so if you have any questions or things that you want to just ask or follow up on, you're welcome to do so there as well. However, we did reserve time today for more questions and answers. So let's jump to the next slide. And if you have any questions or answers, you're welcome to do that now. And then if you have any others that come up later, feel free to use the office hours that we're going to be welcoming. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or come off mute.
So Joe, how about if I want to really have my team reach out to you as soon as possible? How do I reach out to you? How do I contact you or Caesar?
Yeah, so you're welcome to email us. I can throw our emails in the chat in just a second, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. I can also share my number, and if you have any questions, you're free and welcome to call me as well. My typical working hours, just so folks know, are 9 to around 5:30 Eastern. So I know we're in a couple of different time zones here, but I will be around and I'll answer the phone as well. So I'll drop my email and phone number in the chat. And then I'll drop Caesar's email in the chat as well.
I did have a question on the very first page of the financial readiness assessment. It lists the data service representative. What, I guess, is the difference between that and the program representative?
So it is possible that that might be the same person, but basically the data services representative would be someone who is able to report on what the programmatic success might be looking like, or help answer any of the questions about the data that is being collected through this work. So it could be, where the trees are being planted, what the impacts they're having are. So it might be the same as the programmatic person, but it also might be different. I know there are some cities that might have like data analysts, for example, that would be a better person to go to answer some of those questions.
Okay, thank you.
But if it's the same person, you're welcome to say that.
And I guess I'll say for Carson, Joe, we'll need to get in contact with you. I know on the meeting last week's, several cities mentioned that they couldn't make the June 30 deadline, and Carson is one of those. Just the amount of time needed to go through our process, we won't be able to get it until mid-July. So I believe the July 16th council possibly, but not June 30 for sure.
Yeah, and we understand that there are some barriers there, and I would recommend on that, if you haven't also yet been in contact with Rich and Cayenne for their team, you get in contact with them as well.
Okay.
And
Thank
they're
you.
on the call, I believe, as well. I think
Yep.
they came off mute.
I'm right here, and Kanisha will be reaching out to touch base with you very soon. So we'll document the issue of July 16th, but we'll definitely be reaching out to you this week. While I have everyone's attention, I just wanted to ask, I know that some of you have indicated that you have very strict IT protocols that prevent you from accessing anything on Google Drive. And I know that there's a link here with the PDF on Google Drive. If you cannot access that document, not to worry, we'll send it to you via email, but we're also right now setting up a website where you can access any document at any time. We should be sending that out to you soon, but all documents related to this grant program will be up there for you to download anytime you need it. So keep on the lookout in your emails for this link coming to you. We hope to send it out to you within the next week.
Thank you, Rich. Give it another couple minutes if folks have any other burning questions. And if not, like I said, we are going to be hosting those office hours this Thursday and next Monday and Tuesday if you have other questions that come up along the way. And we will share the link to the recording as well as any of the documents that we shared about this afternoon after this presentation as well. So don't worry about that information. We'll share it all with you very soon.
This is Caesar. I just wanted to kind of touch base on what we spoke about earlier in the presentation. If anybody's having a difficult time collecting any of the documents that we listed, just give me a heads up. I just kind of want to have a timeline of where they're at, where we're progressing, and how we can best assist you. The goal here is that as a team, we want to make sure we get this across the finish line as soon as possible, but also understand like your limits and then work around them if possible.
Thanks, Stephen.
So just one last item that I want to add for everyone, given vacations that are coming up, etc. When you submit anything, just copy Joe, Caesar, Kyan, and me on your email so that we're all kept in the loop and we know where things stand and we can pick up where others leave off. I know that there are upcoming vacations, so we just want to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, no one's missing any information, that we're all on top of everything that you submit. So if you can just include the entire team, that would be perfect. We would be much obliged.
Sorry, one final question. I know in the questionnaire they ask about provide the backup for timesheets, like an example of timesheets where we show staff time spent on grant work. I'll have to get in touch with my payroll, but I know we have it. I'm not positive how that report runs. Like if the report is showing clearly each day like the grant. So I'll just have to get with them. But if there is a possibility that it's not clearly showing that in the report that's exported, are we able to provide like snapshots? Because we do see it when we enter the time. I just don't know how it looks in the report format.
Yeah, I think that can supplement. So if you are able to provide a copy of the whatever, I guess, may come out of your system showing that, that would be helpful. But for each of these documents, when you go into Salesforce to upload them, you should be able to upload as many additional documents to the same number, for example. So if you also have like screenshots of what it looks like when you're entering the data and you're selecting, you know, like what you're working on, that would help supplement that initial piece as well.
Okay.
And
All
if
right,
it's
thanks.
not, yeah, and if it's not clear for whatever reason, we'll definitely reach out for some more clarity as well. So we can do that too if it doesn't seem clear enough.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep. All right, last call for any other questions. And if not, we'll give you back 20 minutes to your day. All right. We'll give everybody 20 minutes back. Thank you all for being here. And again, feel free to reach out to anyone on our team, and we'll get back to you should you have any other questions or concerns about your financial readiness questionnaire. Thank you all.
Thank you.